I have here with me some friends of mine. Old friends. Paul. Where can they find you, Paul? Where do you live?
I live in Monterey Park locally. I grew up around here.
Where do you live on Instagram?
Animal Chan on Instagram, just all one word. And middleclassy.com is my leather working website.
Nice.
And then Off Safety Show is our photography kind of, I don't know, it's like a licensing clothing brand.
Those are the three handles, basically.
Yep, basically, yep. So
let's talk about, I'm going to introduce Jnet in a minute, but how did you get the nickname Paul Animal Chan? I know how, but some people don't.
Yeah, so I grew up around here, and when I was like in about 6th grade,
you liked animal style?
Yeah, in and out. When I grew up like skating around here, like around 6th grade, a lot of the like cholos, they didn't really know anything about skating, but they knew that movie Animal Chin was really big at the time. Yeah. So they would like make fun of me and call me Animal Chan. And so I was like kind of mad at first, but then learned to embrace it afterwards and just ran with it. So whenever I did things that were skate related, because we've met through skateboarding. So
well, that name actually took you on a fantastic journey into skateboarding, skateboard culture.
Yeah, for
right?
sure. It's I'll try to make it a short story, but at first I worked for this hip hop magazine called Chronic. You can look it up. There's reminiscences on it online, KRONICK. But it was basically a hip hop magazine. It was during like what I would call like the golden age of magazines, when there was budgets. Record companies had tons of money. Do
you remember Herb? I was just thinking about Herb.
Oh yeah, no, I mean.
But then Herb tried to go indie rock. Do you remember their hip hop?
Yeah, no, they went like, when I messed with Herb, it was like drum and bass. But I'm talking about magazines like Ray Gun and like and all the hip hop magazines at the time,
Source
like On the
back
Go.
Then was bigger. I think.
Source, like Rap Pages. There was just
Yellow
a
Rap
ton.
Bastard was at one time hip hop.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like there's so many. There's so many. So we were just one of those free magazines that were just in the mix. But we ended up milking the system, and I got to travel a lot, meet a lot of people, and I got to pretty much take photos of all my hip-hop heroes for like 8 years.
Okay. Well, we'll go back to that.
No, but basically, I just wanted to lead that into the skating. So basically, I met Kareem Campbell, and he was like, oh, I'm super into your magazine. This is so ill. So he's like, dude, you want to go on tour? I was like, dude, hell yeah. So he took me to Slam City Jam. So that was like a big skate contest in Vancouver at the time.
Right.
Like around 98.
Is that still, I think it's still around, right? Is it?
I think it might be a distribution, but I don't know if they do the contest anymore.
Right.
But basically that was my gateway into skateboarding. And, that was like my dream, hip hop and skateboarding,
So last week we talked about basically working. I worked for free for 2 years. That was kind of like my thing. Mm-hmm. Were you getting paid a lot of money in the beginning? Was it free? Did you know someone? How did that start out? Was it hanging around?
Yeah. It was.
Because I feel like when you hang around, that's your way to kind of. The fancy term for now is interning when it's like more formal, but just kind of show up into like what you're trying to do.
Well, it comes back to that old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
And that's. I mean, I'm living proof of that. Like everything that's ever come cool, any job that's ever come to me, it's been through those means. So basically, I knew this girl who was dating this guy that was doing that magazine, and I was like, yo, your shit looks terrible. Like, let me help you with the photography, the layout.
Was it paid though?
So the first 3 issues, he didn't pay me.
Okay.
And then...
So that's probably like 5 months of work?
6 months,
6 months, yeah.
And then after that...
Exactly.
It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool because I made the magazine better and upped the quality of it, so he was able to like sell it, sell the idea to the record companies. Yo, you should fly us here, you should fly us there, give us a budget for this. So... yeah, it worked out really cool. So I got paid pretty decent after that.
And you got a high education in what it's like to work in a magazine like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, like I said, it was the golden age of publishing. Like, they had budgets to just throw around. So if I was like, I want to do, like, a bowling alley thing with, the Beat Junkies versus the X-Men, they're like, oh, wow, that sounds pretty cool. We'll make it happen, So,
wow.
It was just... it was a great time to be in that world of publishing.
Right. So let's go to Jnet. Tell us about yourself. How'd you get here?
Hey.
Hello. Good to see you.
Good
so
seeing
where
you
can we
too.
find you on Instagram and Facebook?
At Hey Jnet, HeyJnet.
Nice. And you and I met around Christmas time. Remember?
Yeah, it's been a while. I think we met each other
Merry
at
Christmas.
Unique LA.
Yep.
That was the first time we met. I was
Sonia's
getting my
thing,
shopping
yeah.
on,
That's right.
doing some research there, some retailtainment.
Our friend
on
Reggie
my
wanted
end.
a robe. I remember that. You have an interesting story. So, like I said to Paul earlier, last week we had kind of a discussion on the start, hanging around, interning or working for free. And you have kind of an interesting journey when you started out where you worked, right, in the beginning? Or where you
Yeah.
helped out or you worked for brands, right?
I mean, I've had quite the journey. And it
when
was
you
a
started out,
zigzag.
were you in school or were you out of school or was it on the side?
I
or was
started
it-
out as a music journalist. My life when I was young, when I was about 17, 18, 19 years old, was very much like Almost Famous in many ways.
And
I
you're
was
from?
Orange County, Huntington Beach.
Right, okay.
So I was interviewing a bunch of rock stars for NAM, which stands for the National Association of Music Merchants. That's how I started out. I was in high school, and I just remember
The NAMM
thinking, my
show.
gosh, I'm making so much money just interviewing musicians because, this was when they were actually paying you still to journalists.
Before
and
bloggers?
yeah, and I was running around VIP to all these concerts. That segued into me developing even more of an interest in entertainment and music. And I was meeting so many people in the industry that I started out getting internships very early on. I was interning at Fearless Records when Plain White Tees were relatively unknown.
I didn't know that.
Sugar Cult.
Bob Becker?
Bob Becker, yep, way back then. I was
Bob
super
Becker.
young. And then that segued into me working at Hurley Corporate when I was working at their record label and working for a bunch of,
Now,
alternative
when was that?
rock
Was
acts.
that right when they started out, or had they been around a couple years? Or
This was when they started out. This was very early on, before
'Cause, I
they had a
mean,
hit.
I mean, they were very surf driven and music driven though too.
Yeah.
But they came out like a whirlwind. Do you remember that when Hurley came out? They literally came out like a whirlwind because they had so much money to spend on marketing and branding and artists. All these guys were wearing the T-shirts. It was pretty intense.
Fearless Records?
No, Hurley.
Oh, Hurley,
it's
yeah.
Hurley,
That's what I thought. Yeah, I felt like when I was at Hurley, it was a great time for the action sports community.
And so did you just go in and you had a job, or were you just hanging around?
You know what? I started out as an intern, and then they hired me immediately after my internship term ended. So I was still going to college at the time. I was probably 21 years old. And so I was working at Hurley Corporate while going to school. They worked with my school schedule. So I felt very lucky because I had the type of job that a lot of kids had after they graduated. So I felt like I started in the industry very, very young.
good point.
And I was on tour. I worked with very famous people. I was hanging out with Katy Perry before she blew up, gym class heroes.
And when you're representing the brands, like a brand ambassador kind of at that point, or?
No, I was marketing assistant.
Okay.
So I was working with the bands
Right.
on their marketing, helping them with tour. I would do, sending press and promo items
Right.
to record labels, other
Right.
record labels and
Right.
radio stations.
And you learned a lot of that from working at Fearless, and obviously, right, before that?
I didn't learn much at Fearless, to be honest.
Sorry, Bob.
My first foray into the industry, my first internship, I didn't like it. I remember questioning, I don't even know if I really want to be in the music industry. But then I realized that it just depends on the company. But at Hurley, I really enjoyed it. I have nothing but great things to say about them. I love Bob Hurley. I think he's an amazing guy. I think he's done a lot for the industry. I think he's very smart.
Yeah, totally.
Made some lifelong friends at Hurley who I still talk to this day.
Cool. And then what happened after that? Did you continue to go to school, or you went off?
I remember I had to have one more internship to graduate, and I ended up going to Vans, and I was the first paid social media intern.
Oh,
So I worked at Vans Shoes, and Vans is another great company. I love the Van Dorens. Still have friends from my days at Vans. Did that for a little bit. Jumped to the Agenda show when they were
Vans
still
has a
very
small budget. Yeah.
So I was in the fashion action sports scene for a while. Jumped to Agenda Show. Was also working with Benji and Joel Madden of Good Charlotte on DCMA Collective. This was when Agenda Show was very tiny. They were a boutique. Now they're huge. You know, they have the Agenda Show every year.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah, they used to limo them from ASR, right?
2004, 5, something like. When was that?
Something like that. It was like.
Because that was before ASR went out of business. The other trade show that was in
probably
town.
almost a decade ago.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So basically, the action sport industry kind of imploded on itself right around that time. The economy crashed, and then the Agenda Show basically came out to be like the only guy in town, and that's cool. So you got to learn there too with Aaron Levant.
I love Aaron. You know, every time I see Aaron, you know, we just are just so happy to see each other, and he's always like, "Why don't you ever text or call me? Are you gonna go to the show?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just busy, but if I am, I'll hit you up." He's just such a great guy.
Stuff he's doing too.
Yeah, it was really wonderful because, you know, when I was working at the Agenda Show, Aaron's very open about being dyslexic. So I would sit literally next to him at his desk and help him spell words when he was writing emails to people.
Right.
And then, you know, to see him on the cover of all of these magazines with his childhood heroes and how he's such a well-respected name in the industry makes me really happy because
for those that don't know, the Agenda Show is basically like a emerging clothing brand platform, and they do a lot of music too. They started the Complex Con. Aaron went on to leave there and did like a cannabis show, I believe, recently, and now he's got Network. I don't know if you keep up with him, but it's got some other thing going on with Network. The guy's a crazy beast. But anyway, so it's good to learn from him.
LeBron James?
He did stuff with Adidas.
He collaborated. I think he went in with LeBron and some other heavy hitters in the industry to start their own company.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. Aaron's a beast. So anyway, what school are you going to this time?
What school?
What school are you in? Are you in like a school? Like
USC.
Okay, so
I graduated USC in 2015 with my master's in entertainment marketing communications management from the Annenberg School.
Whew, that was long.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. I'm used to saying it though.
Say it 3 times. No, I'm just kidding.
And then I started teaching there for a bit, guest lecturing. I'm developing curriculum right now for the Young and Iovine Academy.
Oh, fun.
So that's probably my next phase.
Is that going to be music driven or?
Music, tech, startup, very creative. USC is currently in the midst of their new building. I just saw it last week. It looks amazing, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
I bet, yeah. So, because you're kind of like this fashionista. I see where you go on Instagram. You do a lot of vintage shows and like very like an LA gal, I would say, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Where do you think, and this could be what you're lecturing to, but like, where's fashion going for someone that's trying to start fresh right now? Like, what do you think, what's the state of fashion in your opinion? Just
the state of fashion, that's such like a loaded question. It's so interesting, you know. I see resale exploding. I think more people now want to go green.
Yep.
And I can see that people are now much more open
to
trading clothes, slow fashion.
That's funny.
Whereas before, I felt like people had an issue with the Goodwill. But now it's cool to say, oh, well, I got this jacket at the Goodwill.
Right. The reason why I'm high-fiving him is because I didn't intentionally do that, but he has a brand. Well, why don't you tell us about it? Yeah.
Yeah, so like with Off Safety, one of the things we do is like we print on vintage polo stuff. So like we had a collection at American Rag where we got a bunch of old classic like dead stock polo stuff, and actually American Rag gave us some of the stuff as well. So we did like 60 pieces, and yeah, they blew out. It was pretty cool.
So you're taking your photography.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. He's taking his photos and taking dead stock and printing on it and reselling it. And you guys are like in Japan with that too, right?
Yeah, we've done stuff in Japan, but that's just like part of the collection. We just have like regular gear too, but we just did a capsule collection with Carhartt Whip in Zurich.
Work in progress.
So so that's kind of the lane that we're in right now. But it just speaks to what you're saying with the slow fashion, you know what I mean? Like stuff that's going to last and, you know.
I mean, it's a huge movement too.
I think people appreciate the story behind vintage.
Yeah.
Because of its history. Like, I have friends who have these amazing pieces, and it's like, oh, well, Miley Cyrus used to wear this, but she got it from a vintage shop and it came from, an influential person in the industry or just whoever.
Do you think it's brand based when you're talking about an old garment, or do you think it's fit and like what it like?
It's both. I think it's brand based in a way where people think, okay, well, if I buy this vintage piece by Gianni Versace, well, it holds its value.
Right.
So I can wear it and resell it and get my money back if I need to.
Have you seen my Junior Gautier sport coat?
No, but I love Gautier.
It's bomb. You like it?
I have a great story for Gautier piece. I love Gautier.
So you're out and about. You're doing your thing now. Also, what you do, you just did like an art show, right? An event.
I just
you
did
guys
an
are
art
very
show.
similar, by the way, but it's in a lot of ways because that's kind of what they do too. But when you did your art show at, where was that? Last week?
This was like on
Or 2 days
Saturday.
ago? Okay.
Near downtown LA,
What
the
day is it?
Arlington Heights area,
Yes.
Arts District. Yeah, I did the art show. So I've had a friend who I've known for a really long time. He's a major international art curator. And he had asked me if I wanted to to co-curate an art show with him. And I just remember being absolutely flabbergasted. I was so flattered because he does such incredible work around the world. He just did a show in Dubai, in Switzerland, in Hawaii. He's just such a jet setter, and I admire him so much. He's, I think, one of the most interesting men in my life. And so I jumped on the opportunity. You're second. You're second. You're the second most interesting man, obviously.
Okay. How did you get to doing that? Because a lot of people want to know. That is a huge opportunity to do an event, first of all, and you had a successful event. But
yeah,
how does someone get? Because I feel like you're one of those people that like goes, right?
Yeah.
Is it all who you know? Is it like?
Well, Paul was saying it's who you know, right? I'm a firm believer, and it's not who I know; it's who knows me.
Oh.
So in a way,
well, thank God
it's nice. I know plenty of people, but I think it's more important if they know me.
Right. And how do you be known? Is it Instagram? Is it being out there?
I think part of it is making the rounds, being
that goes
out
back
there,
to hanging
social
around.
media.
Right? Like, I must have saw this guy 100 times in Hollywood in my young 20 days.
Yeah.
But I think hanging around is actually a big part of kind of what you're talking about, and like being at the right place, the right time with the right people, and like
showing up.
Yeah.
It's not like I have like 50,000 followers on Instagram. I'm nowhere near that. But for me, it's always the right people just need to know me.
Right.
I'm not trying to be a big celebrity or a star and to do sponsored posts or anything like that.
And I think doing it authentically, not trying to like plan who you want to hang out with, because that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Right? But like, okay. Let's talk. Okay, so you did this event. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the event was amazing. So Post Kamikaze exhibits, they're known in the art industry. They're famous because the guy who runs it, every year in July, they're in their 10th year. It's like art shows on speed. Every day is a new exhibition. So curators come in and out. It's like every day is like a new show, quick turnaround. And so I did it on Saturday, and
so you show up and then it gets tore down like the next day?
Yeah.
Crazy.
And I have a few hours to get everything up. And so I did the show. It's interesting because originally it was called Post-Gay Sleepover. Mm-hmm. But as the show started developing, it was like, you know what? These just aren't LGBTQ stories of humanity, connection,
and
love,
you're very
loss.
active in that world as well.
I am very active in that world as an ally. But I mean, I've always been active in that world since I was a teenager. And I think it has something to do with growing up and being very close to my gunkles. And in addition to just having cousins who are part of the community. And where I lived, it wasn't shamed. You know, my parents are very open to that. And so I felt like I was in a very loving environment.
Cool. Awesome.
And also being in fashion, obviously, it's very prevalent.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, about the art show, it ended up turning into this art show that was about love, loss, redemption. So the premise of it is I was working in conjunction with the Institute of Art and Olfaction. So my co-curator is a scent expert. He's a doctor, and he's an expert when it comes to scent and memory.
Oh, wow.
He's brilliant. And so I curated 23 pairs of just fascinating people in the industry, from influencers to artists to actors to pop stars and musicians. And they picked an article of clothing that held heavy significance to them, and they had to sleep in it for 3 days straight, so it captures their smell. And then they answered a series of questions about why they chose that significant piece of clothing, the memories behind it, what was the connection between them and their partner, the pair who they were with. And it doesn't have to be a lover, it could be a friendship. And they shared those stories. And it was fascinating.
Wow, that's crazy.
For example, I had a particular person who's a trans influencer, and his connection was actually his past because he was born a female. So he included his baby blanket. He's 35 years old. And this baby blanket had pink and blue on it, so it was unisex.
Wow.
And the other piece he included was this oversized black t-shirt. And unisex wasn't a thing 35 years ago. So I thought that was really interesting, where his past was him as a female, but him as a male now.
Wow.
That was crazy. The connection.
So did you display like the answers or the Q&A on and like hang up the garments?
Yeah, I hung up the garments. I had their answers to it. This part of this exhibition will also be at Space 1520 in Hollywood on Thursday, August 8th. The Urban Outfitters event that I'm doing. I'm bringing elements of it there.
There's an event there too,
and
right?
It will be bigger at the Urban Outfitters event because I'm incorporating more to it.
Cool. Fun. When is that again?
August 8th, which is a Thursday from 6 to 9.
Cool. So I want to get back to one main question. What's your advice to someone starting out, and whether, because I feel like you kind of blur the lines between like events, fashion, marketing, technology, right? Like how would you have someone start?
Just start. That's how I did it. I just didn't care what people thought, and I just did it.
Well, we said showing up too, right? Hanging around.
Showing up, being present. I just started. I did some crazy things in my life where I just started. I started an app that went viral. I got so much press for it. The Big Bang Theory ended up writing it into an episode. Celebrities were calling me up. No, it's not around anymore, but it was fun while it lasted.
So that app, it was like, what was it called? Front of the line?
No, it was called Line Angel, where you can hire an on-demand line sitter to save your spot in line.
Isn't that hilarious?
It blew up at Comic-Con.
That's so funny.
I had a lot of celebrity clientele.
Can you imagine all the kids on Fairfax if they had that app?
They were using it. I just didn't feel like doing it anymore.
Funny.
Because I only do things that make me happy.
Let's get back to Paul. Who are some of the people that you've shot, especially like in the beginning?
The first photo shoot I did was with Wu-Tang Clan at the Wu-Tang Clan. You might have heard of them.
Yeah.
And at the time, just like everyone my age, they were like my idols. And it was actually for the Triumph video shoot, which was the first single off the second album. And ODB had just passed away, but even the publicist was telling me like, I don't know when I can get these guys together again, because at the time they were so big and all doing solo projects. So that was my first one, and shot Nas on an airplane. That was a cool one. Like, we were actually just flying back from New York, and when you walk onto the plane, the first class gets on first, and then so we're just going back to coach, and I was like, dude, that looks like Nas just sitting there all by himself. So once we got to like whatever the cruising altitude, we like passed our magazine up to him, and I was like, yo, can we interview you? And he was like, yeah, sure, fuck it.
Oh my God.
So
that's crazy.
And so that's one of the best-selling photos I have too. It's rad. It's like, and some of those moments you can't plan.
Right.
Wow. So a bunch like Eminem and Dre during the Up in Smoke tour.
Okay.
Snoop like on many occasions. Lil Wayne when he was still Lil. Like I've shot him like maybe a dozen times.
And then that. You were sort of, again, hanging around in Hollywood during that time.
For sure.
And then that led you into like a ton of others, especially in the skateboarding community. Right?
Yeah. Like people talk about pre-9/11, I talk about pre-kids. Like before I had kids, I was just, the animal Chan, whether you knew about skating, I was pretty animaled out,
Yeah.
So during that time, I was just getting in where I fit in, and
Well, you were also doing a lot of stuff on like video interviews. And like, right? You were kind of like the guy.
Yeah, I was doing content for the Skateboard mag, and yeah, it was awesome. Like basically, one thing I figured with skaters is just like they're just skaters. It's like if I'm comfortable around like my hip hop heroes, I should be okay with, kids that are like 20 years younger than me that are good at skating. You know what I mean? So I kind of just learned to like, a closed mouth don't get fed, Like I would just ask people, yo, can I interview you, and sometimes I get shot down, but most of the time people were cool about it. So
going back to your 2 businesses or side projects.
Yeah.
How do you price your best-selling? Does that Nas photo go on a garment too?
Yeah, well,
How does that work for you? Isn't that kind of weird? Because if you sell a poster or a picture of it or a print, you might get X.
Right.
But now you're getting a shirt.
Okay, so like we did a deal with Urban Outfitters. It was like Live Nation and Urban Outfitters for like their Wu-Tang tour that I think they're in the middle of it still. But for the roll-up of it, they wanted to use some of our photos. So they had already talked to Wu-Tang's people and cleared everything. And yeah, at the end of the day, I only made like maybe $5,000 off of the deal.
Right.
But it's, it opened up a lot of doors with Live Nation and stuff,
Right.
So I'm hoping that in the future it'll be, some Annie Leibovitz type shit, like I got Beatles photos, or something, so that my kids can just, have some passive income. But, right now we're just kind of building towards that.
Don't forget about us, okay? So when you go to the branded side again, what's your advice for starting out from scratch? Because you kind of cheated by having this other business on the side. But
yeah.
Did you guys self-fund? Did you have financing? Did you have partners? Like, how did you get into?
No, are you talking about this now, the leather stuff?
The clothing stuff.
The off safety. No, we did everything. So we did our first. At first, we were just gonna be like a traveling, like we're just gonna travel the show to like whoever would have us, and it was just gonna be the photos and selling the photos.
It was like an exhibition / show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we did really good on our first show at Slow Culture. Remember Slow Culture in Highland Park?
Yeah, on Fig. Yeah.
Dude,
Fred and Max,
exactly. And we did really good there. We might have sold maybe like $7,000 or $8,000 worth like in the first weekend. You know what I mean? Which is pretty good for photos.
Shirt?
Like for prints, that's like pretty good.
Yeah.
So so we had like a little bit of just money, me and my partner who had kind of came up with it together, and it's like, yo, let's try and parlay this and see where it takes us. And it's been like maybe 4 or 5 years.
And you have
now.
Distributors, right? You have a couple distributors?
Yeah, we're in Japan right now, in Beams and United Arrows, some pretty cool stores. I still haven't even been there yet. And we did the Urban Outfitter deal, the thing with American Rag. So we're trying to like position ourselves in like, like the higher tier stores, because we've actually been approached by like the Forever 21s and H&M, but it was
That's all licensing.
Yeah, that was all licensing. It was just like
that's a major
kind of once you go there, you can't go back to like a
Right.
Barney's or whatever if you're trying to get in there. So we're like, let's just try and go where we want to go and figure it out. So, but yeah, in terms of like this is all kind of like uncharted waters, because we have to work with like for instance, my partner has pictures of Aaliyah. And we had to work with the Aaliyah estate to like, get everything okayed. So there's a lot of like hoops that you have to jump through. And that's why, I'm only getting what I'm getting at the end. I look at my photos like, whoa, they're worth to me, like they're like priceless to me. At the end of the day, you're going to just give me a couple thousand, but it is what it is, and that was kind of hard to come to terms with at first, because I value them so highly, but.
What about when the sharing culture, when you see your photos like 100 times on Instagram and no one credits you?
Is
that like a stab in the heart, or like?
At first it
was. Or is it flattering?
Yeah, at first I was like, I was kind of bummed out, but I kind of just realized it's once you let the cat out of the bag, it is what it is. You can't control what other people do with it. So I've actually found like a couple people that have bootlegged my photos off the internet and printed them on shirts. And
no way.
Yeah, I've actually had, so I had to just write up my own little cease and desist on them, and they were cool about it. They're like, yeah, we figured this was going to happen, but they're not huge companies either. You know, they're just startups as well. So, yeah, it's happened at least twice that I know of.
And then let's talk about this cool thing, because you gave me one of these too.
So basically, after I had my kids, I was just stuck at home, no more like partying and stuff. And so I was like, I got to do something to keep my mind, you know, just going and creative. So I just got into leatherworking, YouTube style, and just like went crazy on it. And basically, I've done like, I saw Jason.
What's it called again?
Middle Classy.
Okay.
So Middle Classy brand, you can find it on the internet. But it's basically, the idea behind it is like, I never grew up with anything leather because I couldn't afford it.
You had pleather?
Yeah, plenty of that. So I was like, dude, I want to make stuff that's, you know, semi-affordable. And after I started doing it, I was like, whoa, now I know why everything's so expensive, because it takes so much work, especially if you're doing everything by hand.
And those are legit too. I have one. Thank you for giving me that.
No problem. Yeah, so basically, yeah, I did the whole, like, you know, the handcraft circuit. You know, I didn't actually do Renegade, but I did a couple shows similar to Renegade, and I've done like little pop-ups, and now I've been getting into workshops teaching people how to do leather. It's just a little side hustle, but it's, you know, the whole Etsy thing as well. It's just fun. It's a learning experience, and it's, yeah, just something to keep myself busy.
That's fun. Question, as far as the photography goes, is it the same advice, just show up?
Yeah.
For an entrepreneur that's trying to get into
I
space,
think these days it's harder than ever, because anyone with a cell phone to like an entry-level DSLR thinks, and some Photoshop maybe, thinks they're a graphic designer or a photographer, you know? So it's just
and a
like...
CEO.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You know?
Or entrepreneur.
So it's a lot to sift through. So, yeah, I definitely think that you got to be that guy that's not afraid to ask. Like I said, a closed mouth don't get fed. You know, if you're lucky enough to have like concert access and you see the guy that you want to take photos of pass you by, like maybe ask the bodyguards, but don't be afraid to ask them. Like, if you're thinking in your head like, oh, they're going to think I'm a weirdo for asking them, believe me, they're not thinking about you at all. The minute after they see you, they're never going to remember you. So you might as well ask. You know what I mean? The worst they can say is no. And I've had people say no, but most of the time people are pretty cool, you know? So that's the advice. I you know, don't try to be the cool guy like, I don't want to look thirsty or whatever. Okay, be the cool guy that doesn't ever do anything, you know? You got to just put yourself out there, you know, and it's uncomfortable, but once you do it a couple times, you get used to it. The people are people, you know?
It's great advice.
Yeah.
How about you? Anything, last words, advice? What about, what's your curriculum about that you're starting? I want to know more about that.
So my curriculum is going to incorporate fashion, innovation, startups, marketing, and influencers. It's still kind of vague right now because they're still, you know, we're kind of going back and forth.
I just got a headache thinking about that.
Yeah, we're kind of like at that process where it's back and forth with, okay, what do we need? How does it fit in with everything else? But I don't know yet. I mean, it's still in development, so I'll see. I'll pivot when I need to.
Does USC have like because I know UCLA has like an incubator program. Mm-hmm. Does USC have one?
Oh, yeah,
too?
they have several. There's several incubator programs. There's incubator programs through Annenberg, through the Marshall Business School. I'm sure plenty through engineering. There's actually there's multiple incubators at Marshall, in addition to the Iovine and Young Academy, that are very much about startups. There's plenty of successful startups that came out of USC, Tinder being one.
Tinder,
Peerspace.
Never used it. Peerspace. I haven't actually.
Box.
That's huge. I mean, yeah, go on and on, right?
Yeah.
So, any last advice? How to start?
What type of advice?
How to start?
How to start?
We already kind of said like just start, but like,
yeah. Well, I think you know, I mentor a few students, for example, in college, and I always tell them, listen, this is such a great few years to explore. And when you're a student, people aren't going to say no to you because you're a student. So if you want to shadow your hero,
that's true, actually.
Or you want to, you know, hit up NBC Universal or Disney and hit up some executive and say, hey, I'm a student and I really admire what you do. Can I shadow you? Can I go in for an informational interview? Can we go and we have coffee? a lot of times they say yes, and then you have this relationship with them, which I think is really important. So I've noticed that the students who I've mentored who have gone that route, like 10 out of 10 times, I haven't had anyone give me bad news yet, but post-graduation, they ended up getting an opportunity. So I really tell students, like, use that student card to your advantage, because people are much more open to mentoring you and helping you learn, giving you access.
Great advice. I think now, too, with social media, it actually works in your favor even more than probably in the history of the world to find someone like that on LinkedIn or wherever they may be, and then actually they look at you and see what you're putting out on your social feed, right?
Yeah, and when I was a student, I knew this because I went into industry for several years before I went back to grad school. So I completely used it to my advantage. I would hit up the biggest directors, producers, creatives, and just say, hey, I need to interview you for school. When I didn't. It wasn't even for a project. I just wanted to meet them.
That's brilliant, actually.
And we're still friends to this day, and they love me.
Perfect. Cool.